Long before the United States became one of the most powerful countries in the world, this land was home to millions of Native Americans. For thousands of years, different tribes lived across the vast continent. Some built large cities and complex societies, while others lived as nomadic hunters, moving with the seasons. Life here changed dramatically in 1492 when the Italian explorer Christopher Columbus arrived in the Americas while sailing for Spain. His voyage opened the door for European exploration and colonization. Over the next century, countries like Spain, France, and England began claiming land in North America. Eventually, England established 13 colonies along the eastern coast. These colonies included places like Virginia, Massachusetts, and Pennsylvania. Many settlers came to the colonies searching for opportunity. Some wanted religious freedom. Others hoped to build a better life far from the control of European kings. However, life in the colonies was not easy. The early settlers faced harsh winters, food shortages, and conflicts with Native American tribes. Over time, the colonies grew stronger and more independent. They developed farms, towns, and trading networks. A unique culture slowly began to form, one that valued hard work, self-government, and freedom. But despite their growth, the colonies were still ruled by the British Crown. And eventually, that control would lead to a conflict that would change history forever. Because the people living in these colonies were beginning to ask a dangerous question. What if they no longer wanted to be ruled by a king? By the mid-1700s, tension between the American colonies and Great Britain was growing quickly. After fighting an expensive war known as the French and Indian War, Britain needed money. To recover its losses, the British government began placing new taxes on the American colonies. One of the most famous was the Stamp Act, which forced colonists to pay taxes on newspapers, legal documents, and printed materials. The colonists were furious. They argued that it was unfair to tax them when they had no representatives in the British Parliament. Their message became famous: no taxation without representation. Protests spread across the colonies. Tensions exploded in 1773 during the Boston Tea Party, when colonists dumped British tea into Boston Harbor to protest unfair taxes. Britain responded with harsh punishments, sending more troops to control the colonies. Soon, the conflict turned into war. In 1775, fighting broke out between colonial militias and British soldiers. Leaders like George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Benjamin Franklin began organizing resistance. Then, on July 4, 1776, something extraordinary happened. The colonies officially declared independence by signing the Declaration of Independence. This document announced that the colonies were no longer part of the British Empire. Instead, they would form a new nation built on the idea that all people have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The war continued for several years, but in 1783, after a long and difficult struggle, the colonies finally defeated Britain. A new country had been born: the United States of America. Winning independence was only the beginning. Now, the young United States faced a new challenge. Building a stable government, the leaders of the new nation knew that they did not want another powerful king. Instead, they wanted a system where power belonged to the people. In 1787, representatives from the states met in Philadelphia to write the United States Constitution. This document created a government with three separate branches: the legislative branch to make laws, the executive branch to enforce them, and the judicial branch to interpret them. This system was designed to prevent any one person from gaining too much power. Soon after, George Washington became the first president of the United States in 1789. Under his leadership, the young nation began establishing its institutions and identity. During the 1800s, the country expanded rapidly. One major moment came in 1803, when President Thomas Jefferson completed the Louisiana Purchase, doubling the size of the nation. Explorers like Meriwether Lewis and William Clark were sent west to explore the newly acquired lands. As settlers moved westward, new states joined the Union. But the expansion also created deep conflicts, especially over the issue of slavery. Northern states began abolishing slavery, while southern states depended heavily on it for their agricultural economy. The disagreement would soon push the young nation toward its most devastating conflict, a war that would test whether the United States could truly survive as one nation. By the 1860s, tensions over slavery had reached a breaking point. When Abraham Lincoln was elected president in 1860, several southern states feared that slavery would soon be abolished. In response, they decided to leave the Union and formed the Confederate States of America. This led to the American Civil War, one of the deadliest conflicts in American history. The war lasted from 1861 to 1865 and cost the lives of more than 600,000 soldiers. The northern states, known as the Union, fought to preserve the country. The southern states, known as the Confederacy, fought to maintain their independence and protect the system of slavery. In 1863, President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring that enslaved people in Confederate territories were free. This transformed the war into a fight not only for unity, but also for human freedom. After years of brutal fighting, the Union finally won in 1865. Slavery was officially abolished with the 13th Amendment. However, the country was deeply wounded. Rebuilding the nation after the war would take decades. But despite the challenges, the United States continued to grow stronger. Soon, it would rise to become one of the most influential countries in the world. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, the United States transformed rapidly. Industrial growth turned cities into centers of factories, railroads, and innovation. Millions of immigrants arrived from Europe and other parts of the world, searching for opportunity and a new life. By the time World War I began in 1914, the United States had become a rising global power. Although it joined the war late, American forces helped the Allies achieve victory. Just 2 decades later, the world faced an even greater crisis during World War II. After the attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941, the United States entered the war and played a major role in defeating Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. Following the war, the United States emerged as one of the world's S2 superpowers during the Cold War with the Soviet Union. At the same time, the country faced internal struggles for equality. Leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. fought for civil rights and justice. Over time, the United States continued evolving politically, economically, and culturally. Today, the nation remains one of the most powerful and influential countries on Earth. But its story is still being written, because the history of the United States is not just about wars, presidents, or politics. It is about millions of people, immigrants, workers, dreamers, and leaders who helped shape a nation built on the promise of freedom. And that story continues every single day.